Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you've joined me tonight. I do love all my listeners, and you're really going to enjoy tonight's story because it's all the way from Saskatchewan in Canada, and it's a wonderful story about a hunter's encounter with Bigfoot. So let's get started. Dear Sarah, and to all your listeners, hello there. I'm so eager to tell you about what happened to me on my Saskatchewan deer hunting experience. I simply love going to this area in Canada because it is remote and breathtaking, and you do not get loads of hunters there, so you can nearly always grab a hefty deer if you're lucky. They have really big deer there, which is why I love going there. I used to go hunting every single November with a group of 6 other hunters. I love going in November. I know it's bitterly cold, but the snow on the pine trees is simply breathtaking. It's truly a winter wonderland and a snowy paradise, so to speak. At the camp every morning, we would get up at 5:30 sharp to go hunting. We would eat a delicious, hearty, warm, filling breakfast, and then we would be taken by our tour guide for an hour and a half to our hunting location point. We would then drive on quad bikes through the snow and woodland forests to find our hunting position. Where we went was determined by where we would find the deer located. That would be the perfect area to shoot. I know it sounds easy, but I promise you it is not. Going shooting, especially in freezing conditions, is definitely not for the faint-hearted. It took me several days to get lucky. It was only on day 6 that I managed to take down a large deer. He was a perfect specimen of a buck, massive in size as deers go, with huge antlers that were very impressive. Naturally, I did have several shots taken of my golden moment when I hit the jackpot, because it's not every day that you bring down a deer that size. I returned back to the camp on that day, elated because of my beautiful catch. When we got back to the camp, we are always exhausted, overwhelmed, and famished. So they tend to give us this most huge, hearty meal, and then we go back to bed and we crash out because of our exhaustion. It was on day 7 when things did not go too well for me. We were all on our quad bikes and had arrived at the spot where we were going to start our shoot, and naturally I was very excited and enthusiastic. There was plenty of deer around the vicinity, so we knew that we would have a good spot to start shooting from. It was then that I realized that I had lost my army knife. I discovered it had slipped through a newly formed hole in my jacket, and given that my jacket was brand new, this was truly a bummer for me. My army knife was priceless as a possession. It had been given to me by my father after my first deer hunting expedition. It was after I had taken down my first big deer, and it was a memento for that special occasion. As my dad was no longer alive, it held even more of an emotional attachment to me. I just knew that I had to find it, and I definitely felt it in my pocket when we were riding our quad bikes. So I knew that I must have dropped it very, very recently. Surely it would not be too hard to find, I thought. I told the tour guide that I wanted to backtrack the way we'd come so that I could recover the pocket knife. He told me that it was against the rules of the expedition, but when I told him why it was so important to me, he got ever so sentimental. "All right," he said. "Now this is strictly against the rules. I don't want anyone finding out about this, so be careful. And if you're not back in 20 minutes, I'll be coming after you," he warned. I got back on the quad bike and tried to retrace the way we'd come, but it suddenly started to snow pretty heavily, and the tracks of our quad bikes had all but grown fainter and were barely visible. This was bad luck, I thought, and I was not sure I was even going the right way anymore. It was so easy to get lost out here, and I was beginning to realize that looking for a white pocket knife in the white snow would not be the easiest job. I was sad to lose that pocket knife, but I suddenly came to the practical realization that as sentimental as it was to me, I just wasn't going to find it in these crazy conditions. I began to get worried that I might have gone completely off course, and I might be lost. It just did not look like the way we'd come. The familiar landmarks had all but vanished, and I think I was lost. Suddenly I felt well and truly alone. I began to feel isolated, vulnerable and afraid. I was sure, now absolutely certain, that I was lost. I began to get the impression that I was being stalked by something. I could see movements behind the tree and was certain that some predator had its eyes on me. I knew instinctively that this aggressor was dangerous, even though I could not see it. My hands became clammy with sweat, despite the cold, and I clutched my rifle so tightly that my hands began to ache with pain. I could not seem to even aim my rifle, and what was the point of aiming it? Because I didn't know what I was aiming it at. I couldn't see my predator, and that was the most unsettling thing about it all. My mind was screaming, "Run! Get away!" But my body just wouldn't shift. I was frozen to the spot and breathing so heavily with a fear I have never known. My heart was pounding and it started beating even faster, and then I began to smell this horrible wet dog combined with dead carcass kind of smell, and it was really nasty. Then I saw her. She did not hide from me any longer. It was clear she wanted me to see her. She was several feet away from me, and her eyes were fixed on me, like a tiger focusing on its prey. She stood at 7.5 feet tall. She was heavy-set with a huge chest, dangling breasts, and massive lean legs. Her whole body was covered with black hair, except for the knee area. And of course her face. Her face had a primate ape-like quality to it, and she was definitely bipedal, although I suspect she could walk on all fours with effortless ease. I could see that she had the stealth of a cheetah and the agility of a house cat. I would estimate that she could have been 800 pounds easily, because she was bigger than even a grizzly, and she was very, very lean. Her whole body was solid muscle without an ounce of fat, with the exception of perhaps her breast tissue. I knew that even if I did have the courage to shoot her, she would be way, way too agile to get a clear shot of, and then I would be the one in the greatest of danger, especially if she turned on me. What to do was the question. This creature is going to kill me, I thought. I could feel her anger and her seething rage. It seared through me like the sharpest knife, cutting through every core of my being. I could see 2 of her youngsters peering at me behind a tree, and then I knew why. They were only a foot in height and must have been extremely young juveniles. I knew nothing was more dangerous than a protective mother and her cubs, and this bipedal creature, whatever as it was, growled at me with a warning that was clearer than day. "Ah! Get out or I'll kill you," she roared. That's what I felt in my spirit that she was saying, yet I could not move. I was frozen like a rat in a snake cage, knowing that my demise was inevitable. That was how it felt to me. Death was coming, and I thought I was about to surrender to her with the final acceptance of my fate, for there was no way out for me. I was a goner, and I knew it to the depths of my heart. Suddenly I heard gunshots, and in the distance I could see my guide approaching me. The creature disappeared in an instant, and my guide was looking extremely annoyed. "Where did you get to?" he complained. "You're totally off the beaten track. I told you not to be longer than 20 minutes. And boy, I see you've encountered a black bear, and they can be problematic, I assure you." I realized that he thought he had scared off a bear, but in reality, the truth was very surreal. I realized in horror, as I started to think about it, that I had been hunted by a Sasquatch, or a bigfoot, which for me was a character in a children's novel. Now I knew different. I knew a whole different reality, and everything in my life had suddenly shifted. I knew that my life would never ever again be the same, because this creature that I felt never existed does in fact exist in the forests of North America, Canada, and probably other parts of the world too. Everyone at the base noticed how rattled I had become, and they believed it was because of my bear encounter, but of course I knew differently. My father's pocket knife was never retrieved, and I never returned for the deer hunting season the following November. I thought the deer that I had brought down was the prize of the season, but now I know meeting a Sasquatch face to face is something few humans have ever experienced or ever will. So for that, I am grateful in a strange sort of way. I hope you enjoyed my story. Thank you for that. Until next time, good night.